Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. This afternoon, my attention has been on very interesting imagery. For a second, I was looking at the concept of a light beam and how it creates a shadow, and how the shadow to the light is still a part of the light's reality. As if the illusion is the shadow of truth, and human beings that feel they are in some sense. Human beings that feel there is some sense in the illusion of the world. I am telling you, it's as if there is a bridge. There is an instant where truth and untruth connect, But anyways, in this episode, the title is An Ignorance That Could Not Be Ignored. And I think, there isn't a more poetic sentence I can come up with for this episode. They're like, Mr.Within's talking about not ignoring ignorance. Oh my God. The music is too loud, guys. Sorry, let me just adjust this. Alright, to begin. So human beings, of course, we are, our brain is a certain pound flesh that is like a, limited storage device. Recently I have been considering that it is, rather than just being a storage device, it is an antenna. An antenna that stores its signals and uses its signals to realign its reception ability. So, the human being is a limited range of awareness. The human being is like the glow of a candle in a dark room. And what is illuminated by our consciousness, by our awareness to the room that we're existing in, it becomes our truth, or becomes our access to truth. Anything outside of our conscious territory belongs to the unconscious and can be said to be an illusion. Human beings, we test things. That's kind of our nature. Because we're in a world with known and unknown variables, human beings have to engage reality to become certain of it. But sometimes you may engage reality and then realize that the relationship you have with the moment is more than a ratio of 50% unconscious and 50% conscious. I would say that the common man, or the healthy individual on this planet, they look at the world and they're like, all right, I know some things 50% known, and I don't know some things 50% unknown. But if the I don't know increases, or if the I knows increases, the result of the reality will shift, and a subjective narrative will be overlaid as the primary mover of the reality. That means some people, their direct experience before an opinion moves them, and some people, their opinions before their direct experience moves them. And human beings are being influenced by language all the time. Hopefully I'm audible to the viewers. Every human being I know, based on their desire for exploring the world they're in once in their physical layout, there is ignorance. You can't live on this planet and be able to see everything, because if you did, you would not be in the human framework. So being human means that there are errors. There's a saying that says to be human is to err is to be human. That means that the error mistakes are not a big deal when it comes to human consciousness, because it is expected. What is unexpected is the human being learning from its mistake. I remember seeing a show a while back, and in the show there was this very OP character looking at a weaker character, and the weaker character had failed, and the OP character looks at the weaker character and says, being weak is nothing to be ashamed of. Staying weak is, So in some sense, being ignorant is nothing ashamed of, but staying ignorant when one has a better strategy is, there's shame in that. I sit here and give these talks, very comfortably. But in reality, there has been many moments where I have been ignorant to the outer realms. That happens when you pilot as a mind for too long. the concept of a body becomes an instantaneous assumption. That means for a physical creature, the non-physical is invisible. For a non-physical creature, I would say the physical is visible. That means it's as if when we are physical, we don't notice anything more about the picture of life that we're moving in, the film of life that we're moving in. But the moment we notice that there is an awareness to the visible, and how can that which is aware of something be that thing, right? Right now I'm looking at this coffee cup, and I'm aware of this coffee cup outside of me. And so is this coffee cup me? No. Right? So similarly, when a person realizes that there's something within them that has been observing their life from the beginning, and every day a person wakes up, I'm telling you, we establish into the invisible watcher within, then we do stuff outside. Literally, it's oxygen. Oxygen awakens the body and in some sense activates the conscious dimension of the brain. I'm telling you, there's something with air. You know, sometimes, I mean, of course people are different, but at least for me in my experience, some mornings when I have woken up from the unconscious abyss of the psyche, you know. There's been moments where in the mornings I have just breathed. And what I mean by that is before moving any part of my body, I just breathe to kind of recognize like the brain is good with the oxygen circulation level, and then the person begins the day. But really what it is air is information, and let me tell you why. I have this theory, and of course I'm just one man speaking, but I have this theory that oxygen through our nostrils and especially through our nostrils, but through our mouth, through our breathing cavity, we inhale oxygen. The oxygen immediately goes to the brain because the brain is like the commanding unit. So to me, the geometry of the nose in regards to the human anatomy is incredible, right? Because the nose is like the instant entrance of oxygen, or a chemical straight to the brain, The mouth is a straight entrance into the stomach, right? These are like different canals, different spaces. That means if a person was to actually think about biology like an architect, it's in some sense the spaces of reaction, chemical reaction that will take place. Like many people don't realize, the way we digest food is like there's literally acid warfare going on in our stomachs, The biological system provides an opportunity for oxygen to instantly go to the brain. Every time we inhale, oxygen is entering the brain. When oxygen enters the body, it kind of opens up the body. It activates the antenna. So I have this theory that every time we inhale, we're actually breathing in information. We don't realize it. We're breathing in the opportunity to interpret information. And this is why the yogis were like, the person's breath is very important, to the Vedic thought. There was this concept called prana. Prana is in some sense, you can say how one's breathing is really the most immediate relationship of life force and matter, as if the breath is linking the inner realm and outer realm. The breath is keeping you on this planet, really. I think the title has ignorance in it, so people are like, "Yo, I don't know if I should click on this video. I don't know if I should know about my ignorance." Anyways. There is ignorance, it cannot be avoided. When we inhale, the world activates. When we exhale, that activated world exits. I feel that just like the sands of a beach by the water, whatever you write on the sand, the water smoothens it out. Our inhale and exhale is smoothing our thought. And when a person comes to speak in any event or any situation, there is no, I would say, there is no, I don't believe in this concept of nervousness or the person being psychologically incapable to communicate, but rather the person being off the rhythm of their biology. When I speak to you, I can tell you that I have played with the rhythms of my biology. Think of as if a child in this world, imagine all the children being born into the world. What is their first strategy to existence? The wisdom of the innocence of children or new beings into this system is that they play around with what we are. So the initial levels of life are experiential and they're playful. And so this is a birthright to all creatures, right? So to a certain age, I often talk about an advanced civilization, it will shield, the playfulness of the innocent, because that is the task of cultivating a new human being. That it's as if everything in this world is about eyes, and if there is ignorance, it's because the eyes have not looked that way. And I'm telling you, there has never been good or bad people, because if there was time travel technology, people could always go to the past and change what they did, right? So if we could use a time machine in the future to go in the past and change our guilt, we can in some sense change our attitude, and it would be the same result, right? That really all that we want and all that we can want on this planet is just advanced human beings. What else can we have? You see, there's times where, man shouts at the world, "Why are you here?" To the world. And there's moments where the world shouts to man, "Why are you here?" And that is when the past, like a giant tower, begins in some sense going further and further into the sky, eventually going beyond the clouds, and in some sense interstellar elevators made poetically. So what I mean is that ignorance is a state, and if we go beyond it, we have seen the world that we have missed. Right? And everybody misses a part of this world. It's impossible until the era of collective mindhood, until the era of collective cyberspace experiential access, we are alone, right? And loneliness means the ignorance of thought. It means that whether you are a non-physical being or a physical doing, it is all just here. There have been kings in history where, I often name one because there isn't that much of a big list, but Janaka in India was a very enlightened king. And you can say he's a king that by the wisdom of the realm becomes enlightened. Some people are blessed where the information that their evolution requires finds them before they find it. That's a blessing, I would say. So anyways, there's the story of this king named Janaka, and he dreams that he's a beggar. He wakes up in a turmoil, in just this kind of hysteria, and he says, "I am a king, and for years I have lived as a king. I have done everything to serve the empire. Why do I dream of the beggar?" And if Carl Jung was there, of course this is stories from different time period, but if Carl Jung somehow through time machine technology was there in front of Janaka, he would say, "Janaka, you dreaming you're a beggar is your unconscious communicating, your unconscious collective mind communicating to your conscious individual mind. And so everything in the realm is a sign of how it is going to change because it has already stepped further. The moment I talk about the future has already arrived. That is how fast the future is, The past is slow, the future is fast. When we forget this, we don't realize that the epitome of speed is instantaneous travel in any point of time. That means you were so fast that light couldn't touch you. And so that is the nature of attention. This wise sage comes to Jenica, long story short, and says, hey man, you know, you dreamed you were a beggar. You know, let me tell you what you should do, you know. Can you imagine somebody checking online, you know, and I can totally imagine this in the future. If Jenica was alive right now, he'd go on YouTube. He's like, you know what, you know, is there any course that can help me after dreaming I'm going to be a beggar in my next lifetime? Anyways, Jenica, this very wise individual by the name of Ashtavakra, he comes to Jenica and he pretty much tells them, you are neither a beggar, you are neither a king. Who are you? And this king remembers that, you see, there are those who stand on thrones made of atoms, and there are those who stand as the universal presence, and those who stand as the universal presence, they are strangely so ahead of time that I can tell you that I have witnessed in my inner realms, inner exhibitions, or another word I should find for it, an inner display of fathomable personality in the future that in some sense is walking past. That means all the problems that are the generations alive now in 2021 are like, what are we going to do with that? You know what the future generations are going to do? They're going to walk past the shadows of truth. They're gonna walk past everything we could not see, for their eyes deserve another world. You know, there's a poem from Khalil Gibran, there's a sentence in it. If I read this one sentence for you, you will be like, oh, how deep the world can extend behind our eyes. So Khalil Gibran has this poem he's written on children, and in this poem he says, listen to his poem. He says, he's talking about, like, he's sharing this poem to parents in regards to children, but there's a sentence that's universal. He says, you may house their bodies but not their souls. Or sorry, I'll read it again. He says, you may give them your love but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. That means all parents on planet Earth are archers, and they are in some sense aiming, you know, towards the future. And that means it's like being a parent. I'm not a parent personally, but I think it's pretty intense in the sense that you are unleashing another intelligence into this world, you know. It's like the gods made titans, and, you know, parents have kids. Oh man. You know, imagine in you know, the kid's young, you know, in a parent-teacher meeting, and the teacher's talking to the parents, and the teacher says, so Billy in class evidently feels at home, as if it, you know, the parents are like mythological gods, you know. You know, exiling the titans, you know. It's oh man, this world of us, world of ours, it is, I am telling you, being human is like the funniest thing ever. It's like having access to universal intelligence, but being like, all right, I'll be a little part of it. When will the species realize its eyes belong to it, but its sight belongs to the universe? We are universal beings, and that is the only path left. That is the only marathon ribbon that needs to be crossed, you know. You know, for me, it is just like the human species is planting seeds, whether it likes it or not, and every human being's decision is planting a sort of karmic momentum, is providing a karmic momentum to the realm. You know, if you honor your world and you walk towards that, I will tell you that hopefully in the future, It's like you can't make promises in a changing world, but what you can say is that the advanced civilization may find us one day. What that means is it's as if the individual drops are running to the ocean, but strangely, this, consciousness, the universal awareness being a sort of ocean that is coming towards you. It's as if man did not go to the sky, the sky also came towards him. You see? We have an incredible celestial destiny for the human species, and we haven't realized this because we are still fighting over, the breadcrumbs we find on Earth rather than wonder about the birds that are flying over it. Human intelligence is as intelligent as not only how much the biological body survives, but how much the mind, the non-biological software of the biological hardware, is in some sense maintained. Sometimes I feel human beings are like computers for the planet, for planetary intelligence, and the planet is logging in. Sometimes I feel that our eyes belong to no personality. They are kind of like cameras for higher dimensions, because literally we're designed like a camera, even though the concept of a camera is made in the reflection of the human inventor. As long as there is light, there will be the shadow. There will be darkness. So as long as human beings believe in truth, there will be an illusion. It's this hilarious thing where it's like you buy one, you get the other free. You buy into one side of a coin, you get the other side of the coin. Whether you, in some sense, accept chaos as the spirit of the moment, or if you accept order as the spirit of the moment. And I have personally in this lifetime but in how my life moved, piloted through a contextual chaotic world and a contextually ordered world. And I will tell you why I have chosen the ordered world. It's like a person experiencing an inner turbulence and a clear state. And it's as if I was to say what is the best state that man can live in, the best state man can live in, because the inner realms are active first, because we are actually being a mind in a body, wondering how it's a mind. The future wants to be more like imagination. So what that means is it's like our imagination is like our heads like popped into another dimension, and now the future has to decide, do we want to become creatures of ever-present mind, or creatures who in some sense are ever present through body but through changing bodies. It's as if the Buddha was like, the Buddha, imagine a scientist talked to the Buddhist and was like, yo, is the periodic table reincarnating all the time as human beings? Right? So it's like either human beings are reincarnating or the world is reincarnating as species attempting to go beyond the surface, And there is, of course, philosophical systems such as existential atheism, where a very great philosopher by the name of Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, this existential atheist kind of argued that in some sense there is no exoteric and esoteric. There is no external and the essence. There is no surface, and there's something deeper than the surface. But I will tell you, that's what evolution is. Evolution is something from within opening its wings outside, right? And so I have envisioned, you don't know guys, in my inner realms, I see the future that there's going to be an elite global team. Just like how we have doctors, or what was it called? Like Doctors Beyond Borders, Engineers Beyond Borders. These are groups that are out there, right? So in the future, I see pretty much advanced communicators beyond borders, that there will be, just like how doctors gathered together and they made a sort of hospital in the early times, medical professionals, before they were medical professionals. The same thing is now happening with communication. And we can say that the advanced communicator's social role is to be present as a momentum. That means if people are right now living in a solid state of mind, I'm just this shape, in a certain shaped world, the advanced communicators are like those with the liquid state of mind. For them, the good and bad cannot possess them anymore. They see the multidimensional too clearly. Right? And so it would be the era where multidimensional psychology will for the first time walk the streets, right? And consciously, because unconscious multidimensionality, in psychology, I would say, or how psychiatry is interpreted, is that if the human being can't understand the human program, it is not a human being, right? So human beings can be dehumanized, but actually what it is, it's just a pilot. Right? It's like a pilot. You know what it is? It's like, imagine someone piloting their consciousness, right? And we have to consider the child doesn't know anything, and we live in the world and we get to know things, right? Knowing is the privilege of living. Our mind, any person listening to me, how your intelligence is happening as an event simultaneously over the physical event, as if our mind is a non-physical film, a subjective film, and our body is a objective film. And so when we look at our body, we're a character in an actor in the physical reality. And when we look at our mind, we are the spotlight of the stage. And so for the first time, as in Vedic thought, they called it Leela, when human beings attain a state of consciousness where they see reality is just a play of elements. It's as if they asked the physicist, are you scared of death? And he's like, how can I be scared of atoms that have no personality? How can I be scared of just elements and forces? What we are afraid of is the human opportunity's absence while it hasn't. While it's still here. There's days I wake up and, I'll tell you, a person who has a mind that is going faster than their body, they actually experience probabilities of reality. That means if you're standing on a balcony, your mind thinks of both the chaotic possibilities, the ordered possibilities. If you're standing like on a street and cars are moving, the mind fathoms the chaos and the order. And there was this book written a long time ago where they're like, eat your frog first, right? And what it meant, what the book was trying to say is that the person in the beginning of the day should attempt the hardest thing throughout the day first, and then go do the other things. And for an era where we are mental beings, to slay the dragon, as Jordan Peterson in his lectures so elegantly says, we have to accept that the dragon is in the room. When I walk in the world, I even though I'm like, yes, I feel, honored to be a human being, in even though it's civilization 1.0 and there's so much room to update, but when I'm alive, when I wake up in the morning, it's like there's an honor that I am a citizen of a civilization in a realm, in somewhere, even though it's in the middle of nowhere, but somewhere the attention has come to now, So there's an honor to being an existential entity in the void. But to me, there is also an honor in wondering why. It's as if you are like, do I exist? And the answer comes from the cosmos, yes you do. And then the next question comes, why do I exist? Right? And then the answer doesn't come from outside. It comes from how the projector is holding the film. And so you come to a domain of stillness, a domain of silence, a domain where you actually pass by yourself as if the memory of who you were was a shadow of who you are now. It's as if the future is this inconceivable light of the sun, right? And the present is like an object, you know, and the past is a shadow, and this light hits the present, the future, the light of the future hits the, you know, objective present to cast a subjective shadow. And I am telling you, it's like a person can fight with thoughts. That means I am telling you, in the inner realms, it's like I try to give smoothly kind of shared with the human reality that in our inner realms, or that domain, or that space or atmosphere we consider as imagination, in that space, geometry can be autonomous, can be automated. That means just like we don't think about our heart and our heart just beats, a person can close their eyes and wonder about what they're looking at in their inner realms. And suddenly notice that just like the heart is involuntarily moving, there can be content in your inner realms behind your eyes that involuntarily moves. Now sometimes that involuntarily movement can be an imposition. That means imagine the person in their inner realms didn't perceive an angel or a demon, but they perceived this giant box. And when this giant box in their inner realms was closing in on them, they in some sense suddenly woke up, and you push the inner realms back. And so it's a respectful relationship where the unknown honors you and you honor the unknown, and in some sense there is no longer a concept of a logos using human beings like Lego to build a civilization. It becomes really the honor of man and God being the metaphor for the worldly intelligence. Forget the shape, forget the thing. It's like in all religions, God is said to be inconceivable, you know, in monotheistic religions which have primary influence currently this time. You know, so in some sense the world is our God, because it is the what is watching everything in it. So a person in their psychology, and this is so key, because a person, regardless of what you think your karma should be, or regardless of what you think your karma is, a person's psychology is like a keyboard. What you input suggests the output. This is actually a concept in computer science. What was it called? Garbage in, garbage out. That means the quality of the type of energy you express in your moment echoes back. And I'll give you an example. I could literally in this moment, you know, have a low quality of energy expression and just stop caring for the world. The more I stop caring for the world, the more my inner realms become what's the term I'm using? I'm looking for mutate. Exactly. The less you care for the outer realms, your inner realms become mutate, as if they're being given too much energy. And the only if you focus in your outer realms, your inner realm, okay, I'll say it again to smoothen the geometry. If your attention is too much on your outer realms, okay, the inner realms. Okay, let's say 50% of the person's attention is in front of their eyes, and 50% of the person's attention is behind their eyes, which is awareness is the whole moment. Moment of consciousness. So let's say the percentage goes from 50% paying attention to the outer realm and 50% to the inner realm. It becomes, let's say, 90% in the inner realms and 10% in the outer realms. That's pretty much a yogi meditating in a cave. Right, so your inner realms amplify, right? Even that's a better word than the word mutate I was saying, but it's like it amplifies, right? It's something happens more to it because the attention is driving, unbiased universal energy to that direction. So if your attention waters your inner realms more than the outer realms, you become actually a mental being, and there is no death for you, but the whole point of life becomes conscious responsibility. You know, that means that becomes your enlightenment as a mind. But because the mind is again like the commanding officer in the scenario of the realm, where the soul or the true witness or what is truly standing here as the intelligence of the moment, it is the general. And when the general walks in, starting from the soldiers, that means there can be states of mind where your biological body and your mind bow. They just for a second forget everything and they bow at the direct experiencer, you know? And so it's like that moment where human beings realize the mind is holding the world. The metaphysics is holding the physics, and the physics is holding the metaphysics. And so this bird eventually has to learn to fly, you know, simultaneously move its wings. You know, I wrote the science fiction short story, and I envisioned a reality where human beings are about to be like, there's a crowd of human beings and a really cruel extraterrestrial, ignorant extraterrestrial lands on Earth, you know, with this kind of like intentionally scary demeanor, and enters this Earth and says, you know, Earthlings, this planet is mine now. You know, like just like how people have an ego, just like we have people on the planet who take things, who in some sense try to own the better possibilities of the future. I am telling you, forget about evil people. Imagine an evil extraterrestrial lands, and we human beings are like, hey, you have to get off our lawn, extraterrestrial, and the extraterrestrial's like, it's my lawn now. Can you imagine? Like a savageness of psychology beyond the humanized ability, where it's as if human beings are dismissed because they are inferior. But if there is something superior within us, how can we be inferior? You see? So there will come a time where we have to know our self-worth, you know, as a human species, if there is the possibility of evil evil extraterrestrial contact. But in this sci-fi story I had written, this extraterrestrial lands on Earth and shouts to the human beings, you know, I am invading your planet, what you gonna do about it? And what happens is that in this story, I thought that the future will protect us. And so one person out of all the human beings standing in front of this extraterrestrial in this narrative I've written stands up and he walks to the extraterrestrial and he says, I won't let you do that. And the extraterrestrial says how, like in some sense, questions the guy, and the guy ends up being a time traveler. So can you imagine time travelers shielding the modern era from, you know, disallowed? And imagine the person is a lawyer. You know, a time travel lawyer from the future comes at a point where human beings are being invaded by aliens and starts reading galactic law to the extraterrestrial, as if Earth under, you know, the galactic treaty cannot be disturbed and is under the presence of universals, you know, A, B, C, whatever the name is, right? Can you imagine a future time traveler legally kicking out extraterrestrials that are invading us? The inner realms can move in many ways, the outer realms can move in many ways, and the art of living is to select. You know, that's why the free will is here. The free will is here so we make decisions. And the moment we make a decision, the body and mind will thank the soul. The moment the person accepts a vision, you know, that means, imagine you are someone who you are in sports, let's say, and let's say you can't play sports well, you know. I remember in my youth, I actually really could play sports well. I was an incredible soccer player, football player, but when it came to other students in the class, I remember it's as if the game wasn't important, so they didn't care enough to demonstrate their skill in the moment, right? And that's the thing, that, you know, the true warrior is not afraid of the battlefield, because the battlefield is a arena of growth. You know, you cannot go into intensity and be the same person. It's like training. You know, there was this Japanese comic anime, you know, themed narrative called, when I was very young, I would see this, it was called Dragon Ball Z, and the characters were literally named after vegetables, you know. Like, I later on found this out and it blew my mind, you know, but pretty much like, you know, like the main character is called Kakarot, and he's kind of like designed like a carrot, you know. But anyways, it's a very epic story if you take it in for just the story's face value. And in this story, there's a character called Vegeta, okay, who is in combat with this character called Goku, you know, is in competition. And this character, suddenly Goku is this character that goes so ahead of him, that surpasses him so much that he's like, holy shit, you know, how am I left behind? And so he decides to go into this anti-gravity pod and to train against like ridiculous levels of gravity to establish his inner strength, you know. But the thing about Vegeta in the whole show is that he doesn't realize that he can't attain the ultimate because he has an internal character flaw, not an external lack of power. You know, that means it's an attitude shift, right? That means those who are honest, they access true power. Those who are dishonest, you can try for lifetimes, you know. It's like the world will not allow it, even if people don't. I am telling you, there's certain things in life where a person is unauthorized. I have had moments where I was about to say something in an episode, and in my inner realms, the whole moment felt like it was paused. And literally another thought diverged my attention, you know. So this character goes in incredible levels of hardship, Vegeta, and he attains a state. He powers up himself by going through adversity, right? And now I want every person on the planet who has gone through adversity to just for a second realize Vegeta in that story consciously, he was a character who consciously went towards adversity because he understood that there's nothing than a challenge that can update the person. I am telling you, the greatest movements in life are ones where are new, and the new is accessed when we go further than we went before. So every day, ever since I've started these podcasts, I've been kind of like this explorer in a forest, you know, in an Amazonian forest with my machete and kind of like, you know, bug spray going through. Everything can have added dimensions, you know. I would say the law of endless additional dimensions. That's what the mind can do. That is an ability of the mind. It is kind of like arithmetic, but fractalized as an ability of the psychology, right? Where the person can in any moment see something, add a dimension, see something, take away a dimension, see things and divide dimensions. The person can multiply dimensions in their inner realms. Do you see? The person can in some sense nullify dimensions in their inner realms, and really language is like the paint and our mind is the brush, you know, and the world is the canvas. And the fastest solution, the fastest resolution to ignorance, right, is self-awareness. But the challenge is that there is fear, and their fear comes when man feels he will break in time. You know what being living a human life is kind of can be metaphorized to? It can be metaphorized to Iron Man being in his Iron Man suit, and not Tony Stark being in the Iron Man suit and think from the beginning of his life thinking that he is the Iron Man suit. And at the end of his life, when the Iron Man suit breaks and is like the destiny of its use is fulfilled, right? Tony Stark suddenly finds himself outside of the Iron Man suit and being like, oh my god, this whole time I wasn't the Iron Man, I was Tony Stark. It's like this whole time I wasn't just an elemental, a limitation, I was the non-elementally limitless. What that means is energy can't die. It can't be created or destroyed. When you realize your attention is energy, is a type of energy, you in some sense realize that the soul till the end of time is like a drop of mercury, you know, on a surface. And in some sense, our response to the surface tension of this world is our freedom beyond our karma before we were born. honestly think about life, and it's like this gigantic space waiting to be filled by the new. It's literally like we're in this giant parking lot, and every person who's alive now, your car is parked in the parking lot of this, let's say, universal shopping mall. And so, at some point, after we are done with our business with this world, you know, it's not a goodbye, but it is in some sense completion. That means when somebody lives well, life doesn't end, life completes. And you know, if I was to say how we can flip the pancake of the scared animal psychology is literally by taking piloting attention, right? You know, there was a time where I remembered what appeared to me at the time, this is years ago, as a past life event, but in later on I didn't classify it like that. My understanding grew deeper than time. I had this memory that I was this kind of common man back in the day in this kind of village setting, and there was this notion, this feeling that I just run into this house, this kind of, you can say, kind of temple, monastery, or I don't know, just this building where people had gathered, and I remember I vocally present myself in a certain way that it changes the shift of the whole mood. You know, that means it's like, what's hilarious is no one is alone in this life as long as they have memory. No one can be alone. Even that guy, what was his name? That actor, Tom Hanks, that character in Castaway, who made the Wally wall into a like a person, you know. Even that person being cast away on an island eventually humanized the outer realms, right? He made the volleyball into a person, right? And so what happens to people, especially the human animal, when it is alone and in the outer realms and it can't accept its solitude in a mystical way, is that it makes its imagination into, I would say, personalities of communication. That means this may be a very strange and harsh truth for me to say, but a lot of metaphysical experiences in the psychology of people is actually something that they have sought energetically in the outer realms and have not found it, and it has echoed into their inner realms, right? It's as if, imagine a kid wants a best friend and the kid can't make friends due to its upbringing or whatever, and so because the kid can't make friends, what does it do? It fathoms an imaginary best friend. And you know, and psychologists around the world are like, yo, how are so many kids having imaginary best friends? What's up with this? Like, what the hell, you know? You know? And so really what it is that that's pretty much it's like nobody is a good or bad, or nobody is right or wrong. There is a misunderstanding of the human intelligence that has been accepted too soon. And this misunderstanding is that the human being doesn't have only life force, but can imbue objects through its consciousness with animate personality. This is called personification in poetry. And I can tell you, like, even though modern psychology is like, you know, staying away from the status quo's acceptance of, you know, thought. It's like we simulate reality. If we fall in love with someone, we simulate ourselves with them. You know, if we fall in love with a world, we simulate ourselves with it. If we fall in love with a galaxy, we simulate ourselves as a galactic entity. If we fall in love with the universe, we, in some sense, fathom ourselves as a universal entity, you know. And if we fall in love with all that is present in the moment, right? That's when the person becomes a lover of the unknown, and at that point, I will tell you that you have attained a state of advanced communication, and you have truly become a mystic. Because the mystic has not, the only reason mystics were seen as kind of like holy people was because they had no psychology of fear after rendering their inner verse as singular. And you can render everything at once as if like through, a lot of people are afraid of the concept of emptiness, but without emptiness you won't know what oneness is, right? It's as if like I say oneness is the mother of duality, duality is the father of infinity, and the void is the father of the singular. I have, you know, in my youth, I thought human knowledge was so far advanced, you know. 30 years later, the same show is just repeated. Language is, we are all, I don't want to say we're slaves to language, but I'll say 100% people are worshipping ideas. We went from an era, a phase of idol worship where we were like, yo, this object is the only truth, you know, no more questions needed to ask. You know, then we went to a phase where we're like, okay, objects are not the only truth, but then language became truth, right? And so in the 6th century, the religions began, those systems began, you know, becoming active on the planet, you know? So we went into a phase of worshiping language, and especially now, what is a person's personality? It is the language that they have accepted. And what is language? It is symbolism for image. And where does the image come from? From the world. So language is an attempt to create the world in a smaller way. This is why words cannot hold truth, but they can point it. Words are like the finger pointing to the stars, right? If you look at the finger, you miss the stars. This is a Cherokee saying, I believe. And you know, it's kind of like the person being like, is there a way we can live in life where we don't end up being a fool? You know, you know, the person's like, how can I live in a way where it's not foolish? And then the person realizes there's so much variables and factors to change that free will is just a tiny part of what is going on as the outer world, as the main event. So we are like on the shoulder of a gigantic elemental event, you know, of universal proportions, you know, and our free will has interpretive power of the whole system. It can copy paste the world to itself and manipulate it as, not manipulate it, but sculpt it, resculpt it, right? There's some schools of philosophy that they feel the knowledge, that the information that one can have about the world is all created already, right? So that means there are some people who feel existence was like a baked cake or a baked bread, right? And after the bread was out of the oven, everything that can be known is just existing. It's already out there. That means novelty is just the recycling of the past familiar points of acceptance, reference points of acceptance. And you know, at the same time, you know, there can be like hilariously arguments about why ignorance is necessary, right? There could be philosophers, I mean, I'll take the idea here, the attention of the viewers to this, that there can be philosophers who are like, hey, if we don't have ignorance, how are we going to know what truth is, right? So imagine people actually realizing without suffering, how would you have a spectrum of reference for joy, right? That means if somebody doesn't input a modality, how can that modality change? To imagine a world that every day we are celebrating our success, not lamenting our failure. You know, there's moments where I see in life things happen that I feel are unnecessary, and I just look at my whole moment of being. It's kind of like looking at the sky of all creation and being like, hey, you know, honor yourself. That means it's like the bad karma of others is literally like the bad karma of the world, you know. And so imagine a system where we understood cause and effect. This whole input-output thing is going on, and so the only way a better world can arise is if we input the proper codes into the system. You know, the person noticed outer external suffering, and they're like, what do I do about this? You know, and survival led to external peace. Then the person noticed internal suffering, and the person's like, what do I do about this? You know, what do I do about my suffering mind? You know? Even though the mind isn't an object, but what do I do about its suffering? And the answer is that you find internal peace. And I don't want to claim that I have found inner peace and outer peace, but I will say if my mind was a pond, strangely I have noticed the waves on it settle, and in that stillness the universe is being itself before we do anything. That means truth is so ahead of us because truth is present omnisciently everywhere, right? That's pretty much the concept of a universal. You know, the concept of a universal in philosophy, give that concept personality and it becomes a god. Or an omnipresent god archetype, right? Let me see what else I can say. Oh yeah, passing the shadows of truth. I mean, come on, that's like I think it's a very accurate statement on how a civilization, a system, and guys, by the way, I've decided to kind of like pilot slightly away from the metaphysics, more towards kind of practical potential systems that can actually occur in the outer realms, right? So it's as if like these talks are going to become more about the outer realms, you know, as they go, as a line flies through time in the movie. You know? Anyways, passing through shadows of truth. That means truth has structure, and doesn't mean it's only its structure, but truth has structure, and this structure is generating a circumstance. So any person in any state of suffering, there is a truth to the moment which is being blocked by some sort of objective or subjective reasoning. And the strategy is the tactic. The tactic is to anytime, any moment the person finds themselves in an I don't know moment, or they find themselves at a dead end of trying to solve a problem, you in some sense retire the egotism that was being the momentum of the problem, and you neutralize, and from a purely neutral state of attention to existence, if one doesn't do anything, life's movements bring ideas. So it's like on some level somebody can hear me and be like, okay, Mr. Within has ideas, a lot of ideas. Or a person could be like Mr. Within is just watching his moments, and all ideology and reality is already in motion, right? So it's like, rather than me trying to add dimensions of movement, I am reducing the dimensions of movement, and eventually, just like how the heart involuntarily beats, my whole speech and psychology can even go into that mode. This is when the inner animal actually behind its eyes is like it's like universal power of, like, behind your eyes you are the idea of you by the whim of your attention can change. It's kind of like behind our eyes we're a demigod, right? In the inner realms people are demigods, like, anybody who has a mind. But when it comes to the body, the body is like a, kind of blindfolded animal, and its blindfolded is its own hand on its eyes. In order to advance beyond objective limitations, if there are any, or subjective limitations, if there are any, it means the mind and the body are like a sword and shield, and the warrior has to, in one moment, just put the sword and shield down and breathe with hands that are free from the beginning. My whole attempt in speech is like one ultimate direction, that the past was understood. It was understood tragically, though. And the present is being understood, still a bit tragic. And so if history has been tragic, then history has one way to go, If history has been absent of legendary movements of the psyche on the surface of the planet, it has only one place to go. Do you see? It's as if we have one option. We stop driving the vehicle or we speed up, right? And when I say we speed up, I do not mean escape the justice of the realm or the truth of the moment. I mean that we consciously navigate our psyche. That means the energy moving through the human body is another way of saying, like, a spirit is moving the body, but it is the spirit of the ideas that pull the person to the world. That means the mind is only a spirit because it is directing. That means free will is doing something that is unexpected for an animal, right? And so we are like, okay, this evolutionary creature did not start just talking to it, did not just somehow find language, did not just stand up on its two legs, become aware of itself, develop language, establish itself as a subject with a sort of name and form affiliation with the society and the world. Do you know? It has even reached a point where it's wondering what is moving in the moment, and what greater question can we ask? That is the question where its answer is divinity. We look at the architecture of the world we have access to. That means whoever you are, whether you are someone listening to me and your attention may be more in your inner realms right now than your outer realms, or if you're someone listening to me where your attention is more to the outer realms than the inner realms. An airplane cannot fly with one wing. To be a pilot of the original Earth means to accept all dimensions of your world. That means some people are are still at the phase of wanting to see if they can accept people, I will tell you, you have to surpass that to such a degree where you accept your world, and then the moment you accept it, it becomes accessible to your archetype. But before the person accepts the world is away from them. It's like, a lighthouse, where there is hope, but how can we reach it? Our eyes are the show, the main show, and the actor can keep playing, going on with a certain act. It has the free will to even choose what it's going to do on stage, or the actor can also get off stage, Sometimes I wonder what's going to happen in the future. Is the world going to keep me around, or is it going to just be like a dismissal, as if, service completed, roaming attention in the void, keep moving on, And so really, I will tell you, for eternal beings, their teachers are actually infinite. That means people feel the immortal and the concept of the eternal. One is conditional to form, immortality is conditional to form, eternity is not conditional to form as a concept. And so people think the immortal and eternal, or perhaps the Asuras and the Devas or the gods and the Titans archetype, people think they were at war, but they were also, you could say, moments where the immortals taught the eternals, and the eternals taught the immortals. And behind the scene of all wars, there has been people in the world, in any nation, who have seen, just in some sense, the unnecessary need, A teaching of an immortal being would most likely be to accept eternal grace, And the teaching of an eternal being would be, in some sense, to accept that matter, the material universe, is the child of truth. You see, there's this concept that God is like in everybody's souls, and everybody has a soul, so technically everybody, like a religious person, is kind of like God praying to God if the soul is God. You see what I mean? It's as if the soul is the key into the material door, right? Something is moving. Like right now, as I'm giving this talk, whatever philosophy I try to, whatever method of language I use to contain the direct experience of the moment, it's just raw existential being. Do you see? Like right now, I'm just, how can I tell you, existence is so quietly and peacefully happening. It's our psychology, which is, again, the second world, So if a person has a personality, they are inside a second world. They're in two worlds. If a person is just on a direct experiential level, they're in one world. If the duality of the personality is inspired by the direct experience, that means the direct experiential level of one's perception begins accelerating faster than the ideological subjective dimensions of them. What's going to happen is that language is going to become fuel for the direct experience to move further through realmhood, right? That means if this was an infinite realm, right? There was this character in this video game, or I could even say in the concept of X-Men too. In the X-Men, there was this character called Flash, right? And Flash could instantly just get to a destination faster than anybody else, right? And imagine you are Flash, but you have some sort of immortal kind of spacesuit, and you are running, do you know? Let's say as fast as you can on the surface of other planets, do you know what I mean? Or you're just teleporting to other moments in the space-time continuum. But because the space-time continuum is infinite, and due to its additional dimensions, it's as if like it's pretty much like a runner that doesn't get tired running infinitely. It's like the psychology of that concept would go, like, you know what it is? It's like immortal beings are kind of like shredded cheese, you know? They go through so many archetypal transitions that they become selfless. So immortality's greatest, it's like the evolution of immortality is selflessness. That means the purpose of our bodies is to become selfless. Right now we're using a self to maintain our biological body to function and navigate it, but I think the future's surprise, the gift of the future is how the eternal, how before time changed us in space, we are space. There's nothing to fear. The human era is upon us, and the advanced human era is also upon us. Ignorance is just how the past is occupying your attention from the future. The moment you care for the future and you realize that's where the honor of character arises, right? Like if we didn't have a concept of future, it's like, what are people doing on Earth? And there would be no answer. We would just be in a state of being. You know, that means everything exists. It's like Albert Einstein has this quote. He says, oh my God, what's the quote? He says, we created time so everything doesn't happen at once. Albert Einstein says this. Hang on, guys, I gotta cover my coffee. Okay, there we go. The wilderness of human psychology, it can be cruelty disguised as innocence, or it can be innocence disguised as cruelty. And when I think of the advanced civilization, the psychology of the human effort, the future frees us from the judgment of each other's past. The future is the redemption of reality. If the past is where all the sins of reality are, the future is where the redemption is. And the present is where the decision making is happening, you know. So guys, my attention has come to the chat section. Welcome everyone. Evidently my talk is serving, the psychology of other species as well. I'll be honest, I've given a lot of talks outside, and when I've given those talks outside, the only thing, like, if I could tell you the animals so far that have heard my talks, like, one night there was a cat that was just standing and I was just giving this talk and I felt like the cat's kind of listening, There were times where birds, like a bird stopped chirping when I began talking. There was that kind of moment, Man has a relationship with nature, and I would say in the outer realms the simpler strategies work better because they're more energy efficient, right? And in the inner realms, because little energy can do a lot of work in one's private room of imagination, or private, you could say the imagination to modern listeners can be best explained as like your private art studio or a private server of psychological assembly, Yusuf in the chat section says we are assuming that we are a body, but I think the body is just being experienced like when you see the sunrises or a mountain being seen by unknown vibrant awareness. Yeah, there is this, you bring up a very interesting point. Guys, I want people to, for a moment, just fathom ancient Egypt. One thing we know about ancient Egypt, aside from kind of like slavery building, the wonder of the world, which is such a messed up archetypal story. But I'll tell you, like, in ancient Egypt, they were sun worshippers, and I want whoever's listening, if you can visualize, if you were in ancient Greece and people believed that on clouds there were gods walking, I want you to, for a second, imagine you're in ancient Egypt, right? And as you're in ancient Egypt, you're looking at the sun, and you ask someone, what is that? And somebody says, that sun is our God. And when it comes out, everybody has to, in some sense, quickly get up, and work with the sun, a worship God, right? And of course, ancient Egyptian metaphysics, I believe they had this world view that there's a sort of bridge to higher dimensions as we go towards the sun, right? That means it would, like, to the ancient Egyptians, the journey from the earth to the sun was through levels, not just moving in space in like a straight line. So, and Joel in the chat section says Ra, by the name of Ra. They it's pretty much an relationship in nature. It's like an event, and different parts of the event have such archetypal significance that in other cultures there's even representations. That means when somebody studies the history of their world, they study actually how different parts of the world told themselves the story of the world. So imagine for a moment you realize that the sun is God, right? Imagine you're a child in ancient Egypt and somebody tells you, hey, the sun's God, respect Ra, show Ra respect, what I mean? And what happens is, imagine just that imagine your psychology being like, no way. So if the sun is God and God is the creator, the sun is the creator of the universe of sight, right? So the ancient Egyptians, we think, oh, look at these guys worshiping the sun, but they were onto something. Light is simulating reality. But they might have personalized it a little too much on, whether they had a choice or not. You would totally look at the sun and imagine salute the sun, or bow to the sun or something, right? They would 100%, if the sun is a god, they have to do something like that. they have to at least bow to the sun, you know, if it's a god, right? That's like the least you can do, right? So imagine every day any other person wakes up, they step out of their, imagine in ancient Egypt, the person steps out of their house, opens their house door, and it's a sunny day, and the first thing they do when they come into the sunlight is they bow to the presence of the sun. Psychology is how another dimension is holding our world. Biology is how our dimension, you know, is being held. I am telling you, the mind is an advanced technology. I wouldn't give it too much extraterrestrial archetypes, but I would say that it is a galactic thing. That eventually people right now are identifying with nations. That's so primitive. That's like coloring our face and thinking that color is our face, you know. And to other animals, like the wild inferior species, it works, but to a superior species, dishonesty or deception doesn't work. Higher dimensions break through deception, as if like Thor's hammer, you know, fell intentionally. So I'm telling you, you cannot enter the inner realms with dishonesty and a disregard for the collective picture of how all life, ladies and gentlemen, is present as a moment. The idea is not for us to be the kings and queens of our ego, but in some sense for the kings and for the, how would I say it, it's like the archetype we input into the moment, it has an echo or some sort of wave amplification. So think as if when I talk about something, the moment I talk about it, it's like I am also hearing it myself. So I am hearing an idea that it's like, this is pretty much speech, that when a person speaks, there's an inner realm there's an inner realm event that's inspiring what to say. So that inner realm event inspires the words, but the words are vocal, so that I'm generating sound. The sound goes back into my ear. It's unavoidable by my ears, and so when the sound of my own voice goes back into my ears, right, the thought is it's like another stamp on the stamp, you know, it's like another level is being added to it. So if a person actually speaks, increases the speed of their speech, their inner realms film speeds up. When it speeds up, it's pretty much like, you know, this is a very hilarious thing to say, but the art of speech is the art of jumping. You know, and I don't know if this sentence has ever been said on this planet, but I will tell you, there is something about the inner realm event teleporting. That means me saying apple and somebody sees an apple tree, and then me saying orange. You know, somebody sees an orange tree or sees just an orange sky. Do you see? It's like instant teleportation, right? By the way, guys, because this is a live stream, any sort of question is welcomed. You know, I'm having this approach where I'm welcoming any question, but I'm also welcoming myself to any answer. whoever we are, we will find ourselves in a moment inside the space-time continuum. If you're listening to me, hopefully you're listening to me in the conscious waking state. In the conscious waking state, man finds himself in a global story. This global story is recently developing. We as creatures are, for the first time, evolving our language technology. And in the turbulence of the simulation of language, as the sky of the linguistic simulation cracks, human beings and philosophers are born by the event, There comes such superior reality that not only the psychology of man attains multidimensional authorization, but really you are freed from conceptuality. And when you're freed from that, there is no human destiny, there is no mission, there is no God and man. It's as if man was true to God, an end of scene, And when that end of scene arises, it's like for the first time, we start as kind of like the fingers of the divine, embodied individualism, but then we end up becoming the eyes of the divine. So what that means is right now we're being looked at by a universe. Probably, I predict in 3,600 years, there's going to be an opportunity to look as the universe at the universe. That means we will be invited to the universal eyes, which means a very advanced information system, right? So we have to just live on, endure until we reach the language threshold as a species. Then it's as if the moment humanity, just any human biology reaches full completion of external outer realm exploration, due to inevitable true reasoning, then there will come a point where the human being is like, I have lived as an object, I have lived as a subject, I have watched this object and subject for eons change, I have noticed time has changed this, and I have noticed change has changed this. And so the moment the psyche accepts the world and has accepted all its physical possibilities of movement, all its non-physical abstract possibilities of movement, as if your war against the zero dimension, you were victorious. Your war against the singular dimension, you were victorious. Your war against the dualistic dimension, you were victorious. And now is coming the final hour, man's war with the infinite. Right? And once we successfully fulfill that complete, we become victorious in the final war, it's as if beyond any sort of individual archetypal nature, it's as if welcome humanity to your ever-presence. We will be, it's like the eternal welcoming, where even gods and man and all creatures in the realm are just in awe. It's as if the species became a conscious sky. And so once the species finds the totality of the conscious sky, that means the way we escaped the simulation was we became all of it, and we realized that which is aware of all, in some sense, is not. It's as if we realize the illusion is rooted by truth. It is rooted in truth. Without truth, the illusion is like the shadow doesn't exist if the sun didn't care, I would like to read for the audience before I end off an essay from this literary work I wrote in 2015 called The Source of Language. So this this essay I'm going to read is titled Pegasus Doesn't Need a Parking Ticket. And the source of language is pretty much just these like essays I kind of, poetically wrote about the universe and about what my view on what is really the source of language. So, Pegasus doesn't need a parking ticket. The essay begins. Is the journey of life Is the journey of life your home? Has the poet's chaos emanated a new order? When are you not being yourself? And it's written with a capital S. The attention that is the moment is the subtle final state. Beyond thought, you were never a thinker. As self is rediscovered through an intuitive guidance, the propellers that the pilot of consciousness considers is made of infinity signs moving infinitely. What can be said when the words are not enough? How does the transcendentalist remember the cosmic transcendental activity that never stopped? Meditation is a clear mirror to your true nature. The way we think about life is the way the world is. Can you imagine the freedom of a sky that belongs to all human beings and to all minds? Your great work is more than advanced communication. Rather, most of your greatness involves seeing through the future of what you are what you are now. Ideology is a battlefield. The wise fly over it. The sky is a great guide for the limited mind on the ground. How does life erupt beyond language? Once you witness life as it is, who could ever see a problem? The intelligence of the beings that we are surpass duality's definitions. You are a great contribution. You are a great contribution to the design of this endlessly evolving world. What gift shall you give humanity before you go? The vision of nature is never late or early. It is the ultimate presence of change. Either you live as a caged idea, or you open your wings of silence and stillness and navigate as the mystic's omnipresent awareness. Life is not something to escape from, but to honorably transcend through. If you were in the greatest room this world could offer you, would you be satisfied, or would you want to open the celestial door? To accept your life and to live its wonder and glory is pure cosmic honor. The unknown doesn't have much to teach, for it is the active teaching. Never fear yourself, for the self that has created that fear is also aware prior to that definition of reality. You are the fearless unknown, shining with every being's breath. Is consciousness going to resurface as the awareness of the cosmic duty of a God beyond judgment? The first miracle is how your eyes are open. Excuse me. Sorry guys, I just lost where I was reading from. Okay, I'll just life is not something to escape from, but to honorably transcend through. If you were in the greatest room this world could offer you, would you be satisfied, or would you want to open the celestial door to accept your life and to live its wonder and glory as pure cosmic honor? The unknown doesn't have much to teach, for it is the active teaching. Never fear yourself, for the self that has created that fear is also aware prior to the definition of reality. You are the fearless unknown shining within every being's breath. Is consciousness going to resurface as the awareness of the cosmic duty of a God beyond judgment? There we go, we reached it. The first miracle is how your eyes are open. The second miracle is how your eyes were never closed. Clarity is not a sight for sore eyes. Once you see the true sight of this world, once you see the true sight of this world, okay, I read it right actually. Once you see the true sight of this world comes not from the eyes, but from the source of the mind. All questions are journeys around the universe. If the truths communicated through language and speech were all the projection on a wall, the projector's active intelligence that is keeping the projection is consciousness, which is being projected out of a very unique existential lens. So unique that it is beyond your conception. One of the most crucial instruments that you can carry from this book is the simple wisdom that if you look at the source of language, you're it. Consciousness is present within greater dimensions than language. The language that is duality based is always in awe of how it is here. Study how your eyes are truly open. And when the time of transition comes, you will know the wisdom to how to close them. I don't know, I've written it like that. Be playful with life and do not fear the great companion that a conscious and quiet mind can be. The war on language begins with the individual's ignorance to its all-pervading collectivity. What secret has blinded you to the secret that you are? The world has opened its doors of manifestation for you. Now that you are here, don't forget to experience everything. Creativity is proportional to the vision of self. The truth of presence will always remain as a game to the personality that cannot see itself void yet. Compassion, love, devotion, and reunion are bunkers for the transcendentalists that want to be God's moving hand. How do our eyes speak to the light that has opened them? Once ethnocentrism has been transcended like an onion with every peel leading to the truth of emptiness within, why did the Buddha close his eyes? Some great minds are not individual minds, they are moments of the whole world. Do you see greatness moving in your veins? Break the chains of the ego and set the phoenix of ultimate change free beyond phonetics. Only a person who has truly accepted their self can truly witness that self-change. Do not doubt a quiet mind, for it sees cosmic roars of unity that your eyes can't hear or even believe yet. The jar and the balloon are empty both inside and outside. How will revelation dance next? Those who have embraced their silent and still nature truly see the world as it is. Because we are alive, we must be aware of all life. How would heaven walk in your shoes made of earth? As life reveals an unchanging moment, a glimpse beyond thought's blindfold, you are not just here to be a person, but the whole cosmos. Could a bird song be as beautiful as Buddha's silent sermon? Language is a subjective shape for a world of constant real change. Who shares the transcendentalists' awe? It's a playful task to try to break the mask of all creation. Has the Creator forgotten itself? How do howling wolves prey at night when they see the full moon? A multiplanetary species' first action must be to truly comprehend the nature of intelligence on its own planet. The depths must not be ignored. What secrets of the earth have we not yet revealed before the heavens? A content mind realizes the self has never gone anywhere, and it could never have died, changed, or stopped. Is there divine cosmic attention within you? Serve your moment within all that you are. Every day is a, I've written this in caps, great day to contribute to. Beyond desires, doubts, and fear, the miracle of life guides itself in many beautiful ways. Who is it that breathes beyond ignorance? Reach for life's guiding hand and rise for the truth of now. Pegasus doesn't need a parking ticket. And that's the end of the essay, guys, you know. We must cultivate a royal honor for our world, you know. The possibility of life is our great inspiration, our retaliation against unknown forces such as extinction. Both inner extinction is possible and outer extinction. You know, a variable, a possibility of outer extinction is like nuclear warfare. A possibility of inner extinction is like we become robots and then there's no human. Like the human idea died, even though consciousness can transition through mechanical embodiment, but it's like the human idea died though, right? The moment our minds become collectivized, the moment we become more than an individual, the idea of the individual is no longer in the universe of individualism. So it is in some sense becomes a smaller part of the universe. And I would say, you know, at least ignorance has geometry. You know, that's one thing we can say. You know, if the person's like, what do I do, Mr. Within, about my ignorance? I'll be just like, look at its shape. You know, as if like how many types of ignorance there could be. There could be ignorance to how life is moving in front of your eyes, and there could be ignorance to how life is moving behind your eyes. So many levels of ignorance can exist, right? Just like we see at angles to an object. I want to read for people, actually, before I end off, a quote from Guru Padmasambhava. Guru Padmasambhava is an enlightened Tibetan figure, important Tibetan figure in Tibetan Buddhism. He says, transcendent renunciation is developed by meditating on the preciousness of human life in terms of the ocean of evolutionary possibilities. The immediacy of death, the inexorability of evolutionary causality, and the sufferings of the ignorance-driven, involuntary life cycle. Renunciation automatically occurs when you come face to face with your real existential situation, and so develop a genuine sympathy for yourself, having given up pretending the prison of habitual emotions and confusions is just fine. Meditating on the teachings given on these themes in a systematic way enables you to generate quickly an ambition to gain full control of your body and mind in order at least to face death confidently. Knowing you can navigate safely through the dangers of further journeys, wasting time investing your life in purposes that you cannot take with you becomes ludicrous. And when you radically shift your priorities, you feel a profound relief at unburdening yourself of a weight of worry over inconsequential things. So what Guru Padmasambhava is saying is like when you realize you're a traveler in this world, like every person at some point is like, okay, if I'm a traveler here, what am I doing while I'm on the journey, right? As if you're a tourist in a country and you're like, what do? I go see the tourist attractions, right? And so the tourist attractions for the human being, I would say, is really an outer, playful, healthy exploration of reality and nature, exploration of the world, even interstellar in a peaceful way. But I would say when it comes to the inner realms, it's as if it's just to build something, because what can intelligence be used? That's just a very interesting question, right? If somebody's like, all right, what can we do with intelligence, right? We can use it to create things or destroy things or to change things. What else can we do? Right? That means even when I come to speak, what else can I do? I could start something new, I could change something that I'm seeing, or in some sense, I can get rid of something that I'm seeing, right? These are all kind of like a relationship with the geometry and the space of your vision as a conscious entity, And so, as an advanced civilization dawns, it's as if like an advanced civilization, imagine it's like a sun. It's like a man-made giant sun. And this sun, as we build and build, and we advance human communication to advanced civilization, as we run, as the species, marches, through honorable retaliation to the void towards an advanced civilization, it's kind of like this sun is coming closer and closer to Earth, and the more closer it comes to Earth, it's not burning Earth, it's illuminating Earth. Right? That means it's a sun. The advanced civilization is like the most pleasant experience of the human lifetime, And the idea is to kind of do a win-win strategy where the person's inner life completes, their individual life is experiences free living, and their collective life experiences free living. Now on the planet, so many people, their individual lives are experiencing freedom, but collectively there is no freedom. Why? Because it's ideological warfare. Right? Somebody's like, yo, this idea is better. Somebody else is like, nah, man, this idea is better. And guess what? Wars began. And World War II led to, in some sense, 85 million human beings in genetical patterns that had continued for so long instantly vanishing, right? There's an incredible honor to the human life, right? When you look at the human being, the genetics, the biology, the DNA, it's like an ancient living artwork that somehow has endured so far. There is a great honor that if the species finds, it's as if like the children of this planet will be raised as universally capable beings. That means you imagine, in some sense, imagine children in the future. All violence has been taken into cyberspace and has been taken to, in some sense, how would I tell you? It's like, this, right now, let's say we're experiencing human community experience 1.0. And imagine in the future they're experiencing human community experience 27.0, which means an incredible guardian, steward of the living earth kind of attitude being infused. That means the more universally archetypal we become, or the more our psychology aligns towards the universe being here before we were, rather than us being here before the universe. The storytelling engine of the brain shifts gears. That means if you're a loving person, if your perspective becomes multidimensional, you have to love all your dimensions of existence. If you want to be loving, If you're a cruel person, you have to be cruel in all dimensions of your experience, and the extremeness of all possibilities, like just to fathom an infinite angle to the reality. It's pretty much like, it's either like the neo-human, it's a new human era, NEO-human era, right? It's either for the neo-human era, or in some sense we are not human. We are like human plus all the other ways we're perceiving in the inner realms as fragments of kind of like it's like every memory is a sense of self. Now, if we actually realize that memory is like a dictionary or an archive, and the brain is using the content that it has received so far from the world to regenerate, it's as if your psychology becomes fuel for your future self, or becomes the type of memory you leave you as the ancestor leave behind for the future generations. the world turns our eyes turn the world. When our eyes turn the world, yeah, civilization is rising. When the world turns our eyes, we're like, civilization's falling. And if we take ignorance as just a problem to solve, and Albert Einstein says no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So if the person changes their consciousness, the level of their consciousness, they will be in a new point of view to see if there's another answer to the problem, right? So the idea of challenging perhaps a sort of global mask of ignorance on the species through taking language too seriously, we in some sense kind of reach a certain point where by adding new levels of perception, the consciousness shifts. It's like somebody who goes to skydiving and then the next time they're not afraid of heights anymore, imagine. You know what I mean? They confronted their fear and they're not afraid of heights. So you see, it's like it changes the consciousness, and then the consciousness returns to the world, and it's like, pretty much it's like the world is like a branch and we are like 8 billion birds. Every time we experience something new, the bird flies into the sky, perceives from the mind states, and then it comes back down to the branch and builds its nest. You see, or advances civilization. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and I hope this episode was helpful. And we must just honor, for the first time in history, the invisible lives to the visible animal. And when we care for that, we come to a multidimensional conclusion. In that multidimensional conclusion, instead of fear causing the human to have reactive judgment, right? The human being just has understanding. That means, imagine in the future, there is no good or bad. There's just more and more we can understand, and more points of view, pretty much endless good and bad possibilities to a moment, So I want, an era of advanced communications to usher in the advanced civilization, or at least to begin becoming conscious of the shadow of the greatness of the future. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Honestly.